And I have a feeling we might be on opposite sides of this one because the biggest game of the weekend, the biggest game of the season, honestly, comes to Tuscaloosa this weekend. Everybody and their mother will be there. Alabama is getting 2 points at home. That is a rarity, guys. That does not happen. Let's talk about this numbers-wise. Georgia, 23.5 points per game. That is 83rd in the country. Not very good from the Dogs on that in that perspective. Yards per carry, they're 47th in the country. Yards per pass, they're 49th in the country. Their sack percentage, one of the best offensive lines going into the season. They have completely proven that. 1.72% of dropbacks end in a sack. That is 16th in the country. And they're just insanely elite on this side of the ball. Defense, 4th in points per game, 3.6 yards per play, which is 6th. Third down percentage is their worst. Actually, it's 91st third down. So they actually let you convert third downs more than I thought they would have. Yards per carry on the defensive side of the ball, stopping it is 27th. Yards per pass is 8th. Sack percentage is 34th in the country at 8.06%. So they're better versus the pass than they are versus the run, but they're still good versus the run. For Alabama, 49 points per game, 4th in the country. Yards per play, 7.2, 12th in the country. Yards per carry, 14th in the country. Yards per pass, 10th in the country at 10.3. Sack percentage is 8.22, 105th. That is definitely one of their worst units on their whole team, is their offensive line can be gotten. But I will say a lot of that was skewed by Wilton Fomby and his absolutely atrocious performance versus USF. I don't think he'll be playing in this game at all or ever again for Alabama. Their defense is 8.7 points per game, which is 6th in the country. 3.3 yards per play, which is 3rd in the country. Third down, they can also be gotten here. They're 67th in the country. Rushing, they are 38th in the country at 3.5 yards per carry. Passing, they are 3.2 yards per pass. That is the absolute best in the country. So I still question the secondary because they haven't had a quarterback who can exploit it yet. But when we get into it, we'll see what I decide on. 6.14% sack rate, which is 55th in the country. So they're honestly not great at getting to the passer. Like I said, Alabama is getting 2 points here. The over-under is 48.5. Tyler, where are you going with this one?
Well, I'm a Georgia fan, and I've had way too many terrible experiences playing Alabama. The first time, now I will say this first time my team played Alabama when I became a fan back in 2007, Georgia did win, but we'll talk about that here in a little second here. Georgia had some injury issues, and these are just crucial. These are critical for this game. In fact, this is probably Georgia's biggest game of the season. If you lose this game, you have to play almost perfect for the remaining schedule for college football. You play Tennessee. In fact, you play all 4 of the top 5 teams that we have in our top 5, and let's be real, in everyone's top 5 in the SEC. You play at Alabama, you play at Texas, and you play Tennessee and Ole Miss back to back at home against Tennessee at Ole Miss. So this is probably Georgia's biggest game. On the alternative for Alabama, this is prove it to you type of moment here. And once again, Georgia's the favorite against Alabama. I hate it, but it is what it is. But that Kentucky game, you can point and laugh for the UGA, for Georgia there in a situation where they got pushed around on the offensive and defensive line. Georgia could barely run the football. In fact, they couldn't run the football. They couldn't do anything in the first half. That was probably Georgia's worst first half I think I've ever seen in my life. They had 60 total yards. There was one season in which we played at LSU, and we had, I think, 80 or 90 yards against Joe Burrow before everyone knows that he was Joe Burrow, in which Georgia lost 36-16, at LSU. That was probably Kirby's worst coached half I think I've ever seen. But Georgia gets that bye week, and if you've been watching Georgia and Kirby Smart, and if you give this guy a lot of time to prepare, look what he's able to do in their past 2 bowl games. Let's just be real here, 63-3 against Florida State, had all that time, but this isn't Florida State. This is Alabama. Got to go on the road here in Tuscaloosa. But here's another deciding factor. Nick Saban's not coaching, thank God, because if Saban was coaching, I would 1,000% take Alabama here. But let's talk about Georgia's injuries, and this is the key right here. Georgia's kind of issue on the defensive side has been their defensive line. Now, Georgia's deep and Georgia's extremely talented. There's no excuse. But some of the second and third string guys, and Jordan Hall doesn't look like he's playing. McLeod doesn't look like he's playing. Warren Brinson. Again, these are guys that I thought would be ready for this game. They're questionable, so I don't think they'll play. And the biggest, Michael Williams. We saw him take that terrible hit from Phil Maffa, very dirty, and it was flagged at least, but just a terrible hit there. And boom, he's out with ankle injury. He's out with an ankle injury. He's listed as doubtful. Obviously, Tate Ratledge is not going to be playing. That's your best offensive tackle, actually best offensive lineman, and Roderick Robinson is not playing. Now, look at who Georgia has played thus far. Georgia has played Clemson, who looks like a legitimate top 12 football team, and Kentucky, who's mediocre. Whereas Alabama's played USF, who just got blown out at home to Miami. And let's just be real here. Alabama played bad for 3 quarters. And they also played at Wisconsin, who's not that good defensively. Georgia has obviously played the better teams. If you think that you're going to see the same Georgia team that you saw against Kentucky, you're just fairly mistaken. Carson Beck's a better quarterback than Jalen Milroe. I'm sorry, Alabama fans. It's just the truth here. Georgia has the better offensive line. Defensive line, I'll give it to you, Alabama. But this is a situation in which Georgia knows that this is their biggest game. You ruined our season last year. You were the reason why Georgia couldn't three-peat. It was you and Nick Saban, but Nick Saban's gone. Kalen DeBoer is a winner, though. I'll give him credit where credit is due. I was going back and forth on this game, but I think the key to this game is going to be, 1, the rush, and 2, the defensive line for both sides. I'm more confident in Georgia, their ability to run the football, than I am Alabama. Now, here's the thing. If Jalen Milroe is out, if you get Jalen Milroe out in space, he could be gone, to be honest. And that's not really what he did last year. He did just enough to win the game. Georgia did just enough to lose the game. This is an all-out situation for the Dogs. I like Carson Beck to have a bounce-back situation in this game after a terrible game against Kentucky. Let's be real here. I trust Georgia's offensive line, and I trust Georgia's experience, and I do think Georgia's defensive line steps it up just enough to go on the road and beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa 27-20. I'm taking the Dogs.
Okay. So you would take the under here barely because it's 48.5, and you would take the Dogs -2.5.
Yeah, this should be a defensive game.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting because last year, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but Alabama kind of manhandled Georgia on the lines of scrimmage, surprisingly. I was kind of surprised by that, and it's going to come down to that for me this year too. I think it's going to be the Alabama offensive line versus the Georgia defensive line. Alabama, and they want to run the ball. They run the ball 62.5% of the time. If Jamarion Miller, Justice Haynes, and also Jalen Milroe are able to run the ball effectively and set up that deep play action game, which Jalen Milroe excels at, then I think Georgia could have a long night. On the opposite side of the ball, if Georgia can prevent the rush versus Alabama with that great offensive line and see if they don't miss Tate Ratledge like I think they will, and Carson Beck is able to exploit that young secondary, then I think Georgia will have the win. That SEC championship game to me still sticks in my mind. I do think Alabama is going to be able to control the line of scrimmage a little bit better than Georgia in this game. I'm not saying as dominant as they were in that game. I don't think it's going to be like that. But I do think they're going to be able to do enough. I think Jalen Milroe is going to be able to make enough plays with his legs. So you and I are going to disagree again on the winner of this game. I'm going to take the over as well in this game. I'm going to take Alabama to win this game 30-23. I think Jalen Milroe is going to have one of his patented deep shots in this game like he seems to have in every big game. He usually has one deep ball that he completes. And I think that's going to be the difference here with Alabama winning 30-23. So I would take Alabama +2, and I would also take the over here on the 48.5.
I mean, hey, like I said, I respect that too. I think it's going to be a real good game. This is one of the biggest games in college football. Something I didn't really talk about was Alabama's wide receiving core. You're missing Isaiah Bond. He was very huge in that win against Georgia last year. You're going to kind of go back with a true freshman in which you could circle back and look how well Georgia does against these true freshman elite wide receivers. Name the last one that has done anything against us. I can't. So I think Georgia's going to be able to force Alabama to pass. They're going to not. I don't think either team's shutting down the run. I just don't see that happening. But I trust Kirby Smart's defensive philosophy as well as Schumann just enough. Force Milroe to throw, and maybe some of these DBs come up clutch here. I think C.J. Allen, though, on that front seven for UGA is going to be huge. Linebacker for Georgia. Very, very talented five-star recruit there. He's kind of underrated, but not, I guess. And Jalen Walker as well. He's going to have to step it up. He had a big sack against Alabama last year. So we need to get our pass rush together. Tyson Ingram Dawkins as well. You saw him a little bit against the Kentucky game, or Tyron, Ingram Dawkins. He looked like he was unblockable against Kentucky. But yeah, this defense, it's going to come down to defensive line, I think, and which running game is going to be better. And I have to favor the Dogs here. And this is a revenge game. Georgia can't lose this game either. There's a lot of things riding for the Dogs here more than Alabama. But I would say take the Dogs, honestly.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But guess what? The Ghost and Nick Saban himself will be there. He'll be watching that game, so he'll still be giving that energy off from his press box up there. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm excited to watch it. I'm excited to see how Kalen DeBoer attacks this defense schematically if he decides to go more passing with Jalen Milroe, which I will say this, Jalen Milroe has gotten much better since the beginning of last year passing the football. Is he great at passing the football? No, but he's still gotten much better. And then obviously he's just so explosive running the ball, like you said. If he takes off, he misses a tackle, he can take it to the house. And I would look out for Jeremy Bernard. I liked him from Washington. I know he's their fourth guy, but he's still a good wide receiver, and I think he'll make some plays in this game. I kind of agree with you. I think Ryan Williams will probably be overwhelmed for most of this game. He'll make some plays, but this is, in my opinion, the most talented and best secondary in the country for Georgia, and they're going to be able to shut down a guy like that in his first big game start, in my opinion. But if someone like Jeremy Bernard, I think will have some success here, and I think you're going to have to attack also and the passing game with your running backs. Like Jamarion Miller can do it all. He's a very good running back, and they should rely on him heavily in this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is like I said, this is one of the biggest games of college football, but this is Georgia's biggest game. There's a lot riding on this. I have to go Kirby Smart here. And by the way, we get that bye week. Kalen DeBoer, he was given a perfect situation. Now, a lot of people were talking about, it's actually not because he has to take over for the GOAT. Well, no, just look at this team, extremely talented. Debatably, you could put these two rosters up against any other in college football. So, yeah, but the keys to this game, I think Georgia's going to have to force Alabama to throw the football. And if Jalen Milroe goes out there, throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, that's a tip your hat moment. And, oh, by the way, guess who's first place in Heisman voting? So I'm going to, like I said, we'll give you credit where credit is due. Georgia's going to have to make Alabama earn everything, and I think they will. I trust Kirby Smart and Schumann here.